What does it actually take to keep people safe? Welcome to the Thought Leader Product Safety Innovation Podcast. I'm Trevor J. Morones, your host. Every day, products reach consumers with gaps that compliance alone can't catch. And the people working to close those gaps are the ones you'll hear from here. Each episode, we connect with leaders shaping product safety and public health, representing one of the four pillars driving real change: alliance, advocacy, awareness, and activism. Welcome to part two of our conversation from the top with Dr. Darin Detwiler and Trevor Morones, where we're conversing, putting each other in the hot seat, and answering questions, sharing stories, which is very important in what we do, as well as what we get to hear from other people. It's not always us that wants to share, but we also want to hear from you all.
Yeah, so previously on the first part of this episode, we talked about so many things from travel to Las Vegas to submarines to 1993 and current cases. And I'm really excited to see what we're going to be covering next in the second part. Are you?
Absolutely. There's always more to cover, and with all the engagement and continued engagement, we can actually go into other things for subsequent episodes. So don't be afraid to submit questions to us. There is a call-in feature, but we haven't quite figured out the tech on that yet. So in the meantime, people can submit questions ahead of time if they'd like for us to use their tag on LinkedIn, or if maybe it's a Twitter, if we ever call it that anymore, or Instagram. They can let us know what their particular question is. Or maybe it's a short story that they have to share.
All right. Well, and now, without further ado, part two of From the Top. Well, we have to remember that as consumers, that their biggest fear, the industry's biggest fear, is that we will know too much and that we will vote with our food money and decide to go elsewhere. That's what happened with Chipotle. Their massive economic impact from all those outbreaks they had in rapid succession, that was not because of federal fines or court fees or anything like that. That was because people decided to go elsewhere. We need to resist becoming myopic, and we can't forget this company prioritized their profits over us. And sometimes they've done it over and over and over again. And the only way they will listen to us is if we stop giving them our money. Because when we give them our money, even though they do the wrong thing, it's like we're voting for them to be unsafe.
That's very interesting that we see Chipotle's, we see McDonald's and their counterparts, Taylor Farms, and then we have Boar's Head. There's even some other heavy hitters that have been involved in the food production side who have a huge footprint in food service, who seem to not actually have any sort of ethics in what they're doing. They have a checklist based off of a third-party scheme, and they have a mission, but there is not any true intent in implementation of those things. It's more of how many more rounds of golf can we get in this week? Or how much more fuel can we put in our private jet?
Well, coming back to the submarine element we were talking about before, I recently delivered a TED Talk where I talked about two important lessons I learned when I was on a submarine that play significantly in food safety today. One is that I was in a situation where there was flooding. There was a seawater pipe leak. And to summarize it, we were significantly deep below the ocean. The seawater pipe bursts. We had rapid flooding of water, and take the steps, stop the flooding, get to the surface. The big core learning principle was that you can't always wait for the data or permission to act. You need to act as soon as possible because hesitation can be deadly. The second lesson I talked about was how I would go into the reactor compartment numerous times as a quality assurance inspector. And I happen to have these two guys right here. So this guy right here, you can't really see it. I don't think you can possibly see it. But if you look through it and you look up at the light, you'll see lines and a hair that would go from left to right. And it would tell you your real-time radiation exposure. It wasn't the most accurate, but it gave you real-time idea where you were. The second one inside here is an extremely accurate device, but it could only be read by a machine after you exited the reactor compartment. So this guy gave you the ability to act. This guy confirmed the exposure, the damage after the fact for the records. And the whole idea here is that when you look at companies that wait until there are outbreaks and deaths in the headlines, and now they're going to take action, it's as if they ignored the dosimeter that gave them the real-time feedback, the ability to act in real time. And instead, they waited on the more accurate information to finally take action. On one hand, accuracy is extremely important, but it's meaningless if it comes after it's too late to help anyone. But let's take it one step further. The raw farm issue of late, where they easily could have been using real-time data to be making decision. Instead, they didn't even start to act until they had information from the FDA where they were being asked now to do a voluntary recall. But what did they do?
Continued the same habits from the last 20 years, because there's been events over the course of 20 years with raw farms where they continue to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Without any regard to the interest of the consumer.
Well, not only did they continue that path, but for over 2 weeks, they declined to recall their products. And then, after immense public pressure, part of which might have been from me, based on some of the things that I wrote and published, they did come out and say, we will abide and conduct a recall under protest.
Which, for everybody else who's listening to this, Darin did that in all air quotes, because everyone who listens to this needs to understand that this particular protest was something. I remember you actually tagged me in one of the publications.
Yeah.
And then I found out that the president went to a course at Harvard. And so I said, how did your course at Harvard prepare you for this situation? That's my summary of what I had written. But I was kind of saying, like, why are you such an idiot?
The New York Times had this whole section that they printed over and over again, and it went to other magazines as well, where the CEO said, it was us versus them. Right? What does that mean? And then they quoted me with the whole, you have one job and you failed at that, to not have your product be contaminated. And if it is found to be contaminated, you recall it. You don't ignore, delay, and then recall under protest. This whole idea of recalling under protest, it's basically saying, like, you know, even with the most accurate of dosimeters, you still are like, nah, I'm just going to stay in the reactor compartment longer. I know what's better, you know?
Oh, goodness.
And with the responsible corporate officer doctrine from 1975, over 50 years ago, this decision literally failed all three benchmarks. There was a leader in a power of authority who knew that there was a problem, had adequate information about there being a problem, and then decided to deliberately not act to resolve that problem. If this company does not see charges against them for failing the responsible corporate officer doctrine, which came from the U.S. Supreme Court, I don't know what to expect, quite honestly.
Most of the individuals that are impacted from this E. coli-ridden raw cheese are children.
Yes.
So I imagine that a lot of the families are already in touch with Bill Marler or somebody So everybody keeps saying that, Bill's like, I'd like to retire, but you guys keep just giving me more runway.
Yeah. And I mean, I've known Bill for, well over 30 years, and we talk quite often. We text very regularly, and we have these conversations about this immense pressure to keep being that voice, to keep being out there. And I'm really worried. There's not a lot of other people like me out here doing what I do. I'm not saying there's not other professors, there's not other food safety advocates, there's not other people, but there's not a lot of other people who've been through the personal experience that I've been through and can add to the credentials and the resume, this firsthand experience, and then bring in I've been a teacher for very long, I've been writing for very long, I've been speaking for very long, I've been doing all these different things, my military experience. It's a lot to look for, but this is why the storytelling, I always talk about the idea that we need to make sure that we are fostering and nurturing the next generation of those, because Bill Marler won't be here forever. I won't be here forever. Some of the biggest names, some of the biggest, loudest voices in food safety, you got to look at and go, okay, they've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years from now, can we expect them to be doing the same thing? It's tough. It's tough when I feel the pressure, when I try to find that balance between continuing to represent the voices that don't have the representation. They don't have the seat at the table. They don't have the invitation to that stage or panel or webinar. But at the same time, I'm at an age where I'm focusing more on my own health and sustainability and resiliency as a human, because I'm not 24 anymore. And I have to, if I'm not investing into my health and mental sound mind and body, now it's going to be much more difficult 20, 30 years from now.
Without a doubt. And I can relate with that. I've taken it several times because it was so good, but Scott Forgy put on a course about the stages of life and finding your purpose. The first one was know your purpose. And the second one was know your effing purpose. Like, come on, we really got to get down to this. But I took it twice. And I realized in my experience of life, I'm not here for myself. I'm here to be of service. And what I'd like to give to others is that they have much more within them if they're willing to go through their own sort of transformation, one piece at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah.
It's no different than putting your shoes by the door and then putting them on to actually go on a walk, to move. And I am constantly thinking about who are the next set of apprentices that are going to come through product safety in food, in agriculture, in pharmaceutical and nutraceutical, or even manufacturing of medical devices or cybersecurity. We are accelerating so quickly. There's all this opportunity for people to really become apprentices. And I very much enjoy the apprenticeship model, from studying the Bushido civil wars in Japan and in high school, towards the end of high school, as well as actually being in an apprenticeship through my culinary career, my butcher career. And then in food safety, it was a little bit different. I had to find my apprenticeship because I was getting battlefield promotions. Somebody didn't show up and I had to make something happen. They're like, Trevor seems like he can do food safety. Let him do it. And I would just go, yeah, sure, I'll take it on.
Well, talking about that, let's talk about your evolution. Let's talk about your career path, because you didn't start out to be, doing what you're doing now. You had different experience that you definitely bring into this mix. But let's talk a little bit about your journey. How did you get into the world of food, and how did you get from point A to whatever point B, C, D, E, F you're at now?
Well, it's an ongoing process. As we're all students of life, I'm continuously learning. But it started with working in automotive situations. I liked working on cars with my father until I got so bored because we weren't making progress fast enough. So then I would start using the flashlight in other places. And then he would yell at me, "Hey, put the flashlight here." So then I eventually took an automotive course and realized, I don't think automotives is where I'd really like to be. I love fixing, building. I love this side of the engineering, but I think I have an interest more in food. And I started cooking food with my father around the age of 5. I burnt a lot of toast, oversalted a lot of eggs. I don't think I made coffee then, but I drank a lot of coffee with Dad. And over time, I started to get more intrigued by the stories from Anthony Bourdain from Kitchen Confidential. And I read the book. I didn't care for the television, though the Food Network was getting its coolness to a whole new level. It was going through a new cycle, and there were other shows coming about. I applied for every restaurant in Bowling Green, Kentucky that is now probably owned by Darin. There was Cracker Barrel, Red Lobster, Lone Star, Rafferty's, all sorts of stuff. And these weren't like the greatest restaurants, but I thought, I'm 16, I can work. I'm no longer going to public high school, I'm doing homeschool, and I get all my schoolwork done before 10. So I have all this time to dedicate to a shift. And it didn't happen. And I was starting to feel pretty bummed. And my dad went to a restaurant called The Bistro on Russellville Road in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And they were having a business luncheon with a bunch of oil and gas salesmen. And he said, "Hey, are you hiring?" And the chef goes, "Why, you want a job?" My dad goes, "Oh, no, not for me, but my son. He's applied for all these restaurants, but they turn him away because he's only 16. Maybe you'd have an interest in having him come work here." He's like, "Oh, I'm always hiring. Tell him to come in." So I show up at the bistro, and the front door is locked, as the front door should be locked because they're not open for service yet. So I find a side door. I walk through the back kitchen, and I find who I think to be the chef. I'm like, "I'm looking for Sasha." And they're like, "Oh, he's in the bar." Sasha's in the bar writing out the menu, ordering things. And he is like, "Who the F are you?" "I'm Trevor Morones, and I'm here for my interview." And he looks at me like head to toe. He's like, "What the hell are you wearing?" "Well, sir, I came for my interview. I have a button down and I had slacks on." He goes, "You're going to destroy your clothes. Go home, change, come back." I said, "Sir, I don't care. They're clothes. They're meant to be worn, like whatever. I could care less. Isn't there an apron?" And he goes, "Take off that shirt." Take it off. And he goes, "Here's a shirt." Throws it at me. "Dishwasher." "All right, cool. Here's an apron. Go over there, pick herbs." I go pick herbs, and then service comes about. We're working on other prep, and I'm just absorbing everything I can. I'm taking many mental pictures as I can through the process of like where things are. If we need stuff, where do we refill it from? What's the process of putting it together in the containers? And we get through service. Sasha pulls me to the dining room where I was just a floater. I would go around and help people through service, but he pulls me to the dining room after service and he sits me down and he goes, "Look," he puts his arm on the table and he goes, "I got this guy, Corey. He may not be here forever. So I'm looking for a right-hand man." And I immediately made a promise to myself. I'm going to be this right-hand man. I don't know who the hell Corey is, but I'm going to be this person. Fast forward, he says at the end of the conversation, "I hear you want to be a chef." "Yes, sir." "Well, I'm going to make you a chef, but first you got to learn how to wash dishes." "Okay, cool." Now, a lot of up and coming cooks frown upon these things. "What do you mean I have to do this and put away food and peel potatoes?" Ugh. I find it very comical. If somebody does not go to the military, they should be required to do 2 years in a dish area for a restaurant, a hotel, something, because it will get you to understand so many more things, and then you'll actually understand processes better and what clean truly is.
Side note, after 2 years of going to school to become a nuclear engineer, I got to my submarine, and one of the very first things you do is you spend like 3 weeks washing dishes in the ship's galley because someone's got to wash dishes and unload the sanitizer and wipe down tables. And, this is your way of learning how the crew operates, how the crew communicates
Yes.
with the crew. And so it didn't matter, what your job was. You were going to be washing dishes on that submarine for a few weeks when you first got to it.
It's critical. And the porters, the dishwashers, they have different terms depending on where you are, but they're the most least respected person, though they're the most important person of the entire operation, because your porter, your dishwasher is also your butcher. They're also your delivery receiver. They're the person that will drop everything and do whatever needs to be done. You need more stuff. You're like, hey man, I need more pasta for the line. Can you go get more sauce? Can you go get more fries? And they'll run out and do it, but they'll keep everything going. And I truly believe that that was one of it's the first place that I go in an operation is sanitation. I don't typically work with food service operations as much. I work mostly in food manufacturing, but either way, I'll go straight to sanitation and I start talking to people. Put on an apron. I'm like, hey, can I help you with stuff? Do you want me to pass? Do you want me to empty? What do you want me to do here? Can I refill anything for you? You good on liquids? You got all your soaps, your sanitizers? You need, hopefully your boots don't have any holes in them. I'm sure that we could get you a new pair of shoes. Like, what size are you, man? So I said yes to Sasha, and he took me under his wing and made me into a chef, where I learned how to actually expo, lead a kitchen, help a kitchen, also not to become an a-hole to the front of the house because I was a hot-headed turd. And I would stand at the pass where on the other side of the window when they would bring stuff back and then be like, they're stupid. You're stupid. What the heck? Like, And I was just an idiot, but I really learned from being in the mix and being thrown into the trenches so Sasha could go back to Bosnia and see his family. And then I would have keys to the restaurant and I would run part of the shift with somebody else. So there was somebody that would come in and do the first part. I would take care of the second part. I would make sure that we were up to date on everything, that we prepared the veal exactly as it was supposed to be prepared. And we got to come up with new specials. I got guidance from other cooks and chefs, and they gave me books, and I just immersed myself into recipe books. I was like, these are great. I love them because I would open them up and read them, think about how I could pair flavors together. And then Sasha sits me down one day and goes, I don't have anything left for you. You need to go to Europe. Get a backpack, get lost, go sleep on the doorsteps, knock on the door, tell them that you'll work for free because staging or trails are very popular in Europe. But there's so much more for you other than here. Whatever you do, don't go to culinary school. So I took a trip to New York, considered CIA, the Culinary Institute of America. It was like, it's kind of pricey. There's a French Culinary Institute from the International Culinary Center. And it's a 6-month accelerated program. Sweet. I could get all of CIA in 6 months. Dude, I can work and go to school full time. Not smart, but I was I was right about to turn 20 and I thought I was invincible myself. Now, I decide I'm going to go to French Culinary Institute, but shoot, I can't afford this. My dad goes, I'll sign for you. I'll sign the loan. You just have to repay it. And I was like, fair, done. So I end up making it to New York City. I'm in culinary school. I don't want any distractions. I just focus. Take out note cards, be prepared for the next day, and then execute the next day. My name got put into the hat because I came to New York City and would tell people I used to break down fish and beef for this restaurant. They're like, oh, Trevor's a butcher. I wasn't a butcher, but I was a cook that could do multiple things. Sasha told me, if you ever go anywhere, make sure that you can fill the responsibility of 2 roles. You can cut meat, you can break down fish, you can receive, you can expo, you can do all these things. But if you're a more versatile cook, that will really get your foot in the door. So I immersed myself in all things butchery through culinary school, and somebody put my name in the hat for the very first eataly in Flatiron, New York. It's a really lovely operation. They were about to open, and somebody put my name in the hat as a manager. Okay, I thought I was just applying for a job, but it turns out I went through all the interview process just to be told no. Like, I paid for my subway to go down for them to just say, we went another direction. And I went, okay, thank you. Though I was very annoyed that I had to come all this way for them to say, sorry, we chose somebody else, which was a meat cutter who didn't stay very long. They decided to get rid of him very fast. And then they called me back when I was already working for somebody else. And they said, hey, we really need team members. Would you take a position here? And I got a $4.50 increase an hour. I was making 8 and change, and I went to make 12 and change. And I was like, oh, this is reasonable. I can afford my rent and food and help the person that I needed to help at the time. I actually am working at Italy. I'm coming in, and the bandsaw is filthy. It's still dirty from the morning prep, and it's just driving me crazy. Before I knew what a standard operating procedure was, I decided to write a sanitation standard operating procedure. This is what you do. You unplug the bandsaw. You disassemble all these parts. Here's the manual, step by step by step. Somebody came to that operation who was a consultant, Pat Lafrida, and he found it and put it in front of me and was like, who wrote this? I did, sir. Why did you write this? Well, if we're supposed to be tending to the guest, and if Darin comes in for the Colby short ribs that he wants, because every Friday he's like doing his Colby short ribs for his barbecue, it's the middle of the summer, and it takes me 30 minutes to clean the bandsaw before I can even cut the short ribs, it's just taking away from the experience. And when we were brought on here, we were told to make sure that the guest had the best experience so that they would always come back. If they asked where something was, we walk them to it. If they needed to know where the beer garden was, we would take them up the elevator to the beer garden. If they said, hey, I'd like some recommendations, we'd walk the floor with them. We gave them the best experience. And he goes, oh, okay, I get it. 3 months, you're coming to work for me. Can't tell a soul. Yes, sir. 3 months later, I get in. I still have the email. It's lafrida@aol.com. And I'm like, holy moly. And I'm on my break. Can you be at the plant tonight? Yes, sir. What's the best way to get there? Because I'm like, I don't even know where the plant is. He goes, you know what? I'll come to you. He comes to me. We sit down. He makes me an offer. I'm like, done. I'm in. So now I go and start working for Pat Lafrida Meats, where I know nothing about wholesale manufacturing meat and poultry products. But I'm an apprentice butcher. I'm a chef. I graduated culinary school. And he's like, all right, well, here's a chef coat for you. You'll be our chef and you can do the events. I first started in sales. I went to the production floor. I learned how to drive a forklift on days that chefs would, of course, chefs always wait to the last minute to figure out that they need more of something. I would drive a 20-foot truck into New York City from New Jersey. Luckily, I didn't need a CDL, but I grew up driving equipment on farms. So I was like, this is easy peasy. I had a key to the facility and I was the plant manager and I was just learning everything as it was, but I was failing fast. I was getting my butt kicked. We started getting non-compliance reports and the USDA inspectors not helping me 100% of the way. He's just going, sit down and read the CFRs. I'm like, the Code of Federal Regulations, what am I supposed to gain from this? And he goes, read it, reread it, look for guidance. There's not much I can do for you as your inspector, but start here. So I started from getting my butt kicked and figuring how to do things. And then we grew very quickly. We were fulfilling Shake Shack. This is way before they went and did their IPO, but they're like, all right, we need this stuff in Hong Kong. We need it in Saudi Arabia. We need it in the European Union. Figure out how to get it there. Oh, and it needs to be in Arabic. Holy moly. All right, well, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it happen. So the first order goes out, a 20-foot container. They're like, no, let's do 40-foot. We're like, it makes the most sense to fill the 40-foot container because it costs us the same. Sure. So increase production, get everything done. All the labels are on it. I start working with a broker who can help me navigate some of these things. I have to pay a broker anyways. They pick it up. They take it to the dock. They make sure it gets on the ship. All the paperwork goes, and it's going to clear customs on the other side. And I did it successfully. But man, I put in, talking about being, in the 20s and thinking you're going to just, nothing's going to tear you down. I was doing 120-hour weeks. There's an apartment above the plant I would sleep at. I'd just sleep on the train, sleep on the bus, whatever it took to make it happen. And my health started deteriorating, but I didn't realize it at that moment. But I actually had my first seizure on the production line. I'm helping fill one of the machines, just from patty machine to packaging machine. They're pretty close, but I have this moment where I go blank. If I were to have a seizure now, you would just see me like leave my body. I might tick, grunt, hiss, say curse words, all sorts of weird things. And people are like, "Hey, you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Why? They're like, "Fill the burgers." I'm like, yeah, got it. No worries. But I showed up before the team was there. And then after the team left, anytime they needed something, it was about 200 people and they primarily spoke Spanish. Though my father is Mexican American, we didn't learn Spanish. So being in kitchens, being on the production floor, and pretending like I didn't know they were just talking trash, I picked up Spanish quite well. And they saw, you know what, this guy, he's here, he works, we need something, we ask him. Then chefs started to call me. "Pat says you're the guy for our HACCP plans. I tell me what you want and I can send you documents, but I don't have time to write a darn thing. Like, I am just stacked. I'm also developing a new product for US Foods. So what do you need? Figure it out, call me back." And then more chefs would call. So people would just start to learn that Trevor's a butcher, Trevor's a food safety guy. And eventually I got introduced to people that moved me to Las Vegas to open a butcher shop and steakhouse. And then I realized, I can actually make something out of this. I should probably start charging for services rather than giving them away for free. And over time, I ended up at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas and was running their butcher shop, which was very much like a mini processing facility, supply everything on property, and give the chefs anything they need. But then the chefs would come to me and say, "Dude, we understand that you know how to butcher and make charcuterie. Jose Andres has this morcilla sausage. Do you know what morcilla is?" "Yeah, blood sausage, but we are going to put rice in it." He goes, "Yeah, I got a recipe, but nobody else has been able to do it. Can you do it? Why don't you get me some of the mise en place, the things in place, and I'll get a sample of blood and we'll make a test batch and you can tell me yay or nay. How about that?" And he goes, "Sweet." We make it. They love it. I'd go to the chefs and say, "Chefs, what are you paying too much for right now? Tips and tails, filet? Oh, chef, I got a freezer full of tips and tails. You're paying $18 for them? Pfft, I'll give them to you for 12. Technically, I could give them to you for free because we don't have to make a profit here. But how about we do 12? Cool? All right." So now all these numbers start to go to the executive level and they're like, "Sweet. So can you make us a sausage that we could use in banquets and possibly in the buffet? What kind of sausage do you want?" "Oh, well, we'd like to do this chicken sausage because we're paying almost $10 a pound and it dries out. People complain and it just sucks." "Cool. Yeah, I'm going to use chicken thighs though. I'm not going to use any breast meat, but it'd be less than $2. By the way, can we CapEx this machine that's only going to cost us like 40 grand and probably pay for itself in a couple of months? 2, 3. They went, "Yeah, here, sign, done." Ended up on my dock. Goes into place. I'm like, "I know these machines. We used to use the big ones." So I start pumping out more stuff. Now, all my other charcuterie was testing only because we didn't have HACCP plans. And HACCP plans for a health department are way different and much more challenging than they are in a food manufacturing setting because it seems like restaurant inspectors just don't really know HACCP in itself, but they're the inspector and you do what I say. All I had to do was put that charcuterie on my VP's desk because all he wanted me to do was make him food. So fast forward even further, Blackstone comes in, buys out Cosmopolitan, MGM's coming in. There's so much writing on the wall, but I find a document. I had talk about cybersecurity and access you shouldn't have. I was able to find a document that told me I'm pretty much having my entire department eliminated. So I started investing what additional time I had into learning anything else about food safety, micro classes, advanced HACCP, train the trainer HACCP, and just sharpening my knife even further as much as possible. So that's the hodgepodge story of it, but my health has played a pivotal role in this because when my wife was the one that truly gave me the diagnosis of being epileptic, and then we finally got it confirmed from a neurologist. And through that time, I kind of got really depressed. But then I started to think, you know what? This thing doesn't define me. This diagnosis doesn't define me. They told me not to do things, and I went, ha, 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 I'm going to do them. Not to walk, I'm going to run. Signed up for a ultra marathon and completed it. Stepped across the finish line like Rocky on a rock and had a seizure immediately. I think it's very funny now. But my friends were like, hey, you had one of those moments. And I'm like, put it in my phone and tell me about it later.
Wow. That's incredible. I used to teach without having guest speakers, and then I started having guest speakers, and then once or twice I would ask a question, what was your career path? And I come to find out that the students were so appreciative of hearing guest speakers, how did they get to where they are today? And that became a real important element. So when I have guest speakers in my classes, I'm always asking them, tell me about your career development, your career advancement there. And it's amazing when you start to see certain patterns, or you start to be able to understand, oh, that's why you focus on that. I think that what you and I have both done in terms of storytelling, again, is something that needs to be there in the food industry for leaders. Understanding, why do your customers prefer this? Why do your suppliers have this issue? Why are your distributors asking these questions? You're doing a simulation recall, but you're not including all of the different parts of your business in there. You're not including your finance department. You're not including your legal counsel. You're not including your publication and media communications team. You're not including your security office, because in the real recall, those people are all going to be involved one way, shape, or form or another. And if you're not including them when you're doing these simulations, you're not asking them for their questions, their feedback, their experiences, you're not truly understanding what is going on. And I think that I don't speak in front of every audience and talk for 20 minutes about how did I get here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that. But I do think that when we have a better understanding, it really makes a difference in terms of how we listen and how we interpret and engage with and even resonate with the information that's being shared.
Absolutely. When I ultimately decided to build Control Point, I had no idea what it was going to be. I'm constantly using a whetstone to sharpen the knife and always investing in further education and development. Now I'm a certified quality auditor, and I audit sports equipment, fire protection equipment, additive manufacturing, which is the term for 3D printing. There's automotive, aerospace, medical devices, because I take things away. I told myself when I came from manufacturing, I'll never be an auditor. I just don't want to do it. I'd rather help the facilities that want to be audited or achieve third party to realize that they have a lot already working. And if they fine tune these things, that it lays a greater foundation to build for a trajectory of up, knowing that there are mountains and valleys that are going to continuously happen, but it will be second nature when these challenges come forward and they really start to become opportunities. So the auditing that I take away from that and then put it in a food and say, you guys should think about not becoming Six Sigma lean, but you should look into the aspect of 5S, of setting and sorting and standardizing and just being more organized rather than this clutter. It will help you to come in focused. Let me tell you a story. When I leave the office, I clear the clutter. If I have notes, I put them into the computer. Rather than type them up, I can scan them now. And then when I come back to the office, my desk is ready for me and whatever I need to do. And then I keep this rhythmic pattern even on the road. I wake up at 3 a.m., I work out, I eat my breakfast, prepare for whatever it is I need to do, and then I do it. and then I close out the day. And I realize that if I don't get to something, it's okay. It's the first thing on the task list tomorrow, but I've started it. I don't make excuses to put it off. Scott tells us if there's anything that you can give somebody, it's a coin and it says around. And then you flip it over and it says, get around to it. Stop making excuses for why you can't do something, because that is the hardest thing, is just doing it in the first place. Put the effort in and start little by little by little, and then make the necessary refinements from it.
It's amazing how everything you said is extremely important, whether we're talking about food safety or, quite honestly, leadership in any industry or sector or project whatsoever. And, the way you've described, I guess I could best describe it as the ideal. I would imagine that we would all want to have that, the predictability, the opportunity, the clarity, and the readiness to take on the next challenges in front of us.
I know that we're coming close to landing the plane in this particular event, and I foresee us continuing this conversation, hopefully more in person, breaking bread, or possibly sharing the stage in, I think you said Virginia, in some aspect, to share stories together. But I'd like to just say how much I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your already stacked schedule to continue to do this, and for the fact that you were actually one of the first people when I put out an inquiry on LinkedIn to say what sounds best for this particular idea, being the summit at the time. And you said, I want to be involved in that if you have any interest. And I was like, I kind of did this schoolgirl, like, oh my God, I can't believe he messaged me. Really? Yeah. So thank you. Sincerely, I truly appreciate it. And anytime you and Jeanette need more salt, please ask. I keep a case in this office.
Salt is good. Salt is good. Oh, not all salt. The specific salt that we'll have to talk. We'll have to mention that in a future episode. But thank you very much. And again, I love the fact that what we did here really underscores the importance of storytelling. There's so much to the story. And here's the deal. If we're not listening to the story, and if we're not crafting the right story, then we'll have the moment where leadership is making decisions that will change the story and result in a story that now we're going to have to live with, and not in a good way necessarily. And I've even seen examples, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, of where companies are going and they're literally they're falsifying the story, they're rewriting the story, they're changing the truth because the truth is inconvenient. And it's kind of like the whole, look, you could have invested $5 million to prevent this, but now you're spending $150 million to deal with the mess. You could have invested more into storytelling proactively and with intention, rather than dealing with what goes into the storytelling in reaction to what you could have done differently. And the story that we tell is so important. But unfortunately, in the world of food safety failures, we're losing people whose life stories are never going to be able to play out, and they're never going to be able to tell the stories. Their families are going to tell the stories for them. And we need to try to prevent that. So I thank you very much.
Of course. And for those who have not already registered, tickets are on sale at controlpointholdings.com for the Thought Leader Product Safety Innovation Summit on August 14th. And Dr. Darin Detwiler has graciously agreed to be our keynote speaker, and we have other people coming on board with us. So sign up before June 13th to become a founding member, which actually grants you discounts to further events. If you want the VIP membership, it truly gives you all the background stuff and resources that will be vital for the future, which will stay live indefinitely. And all the details are there, but if you ever have any questions, you can just email us at info@controlpointholdings.com. One quick question for you, though. Where should people reach out to you most? What particular platform do you prefer?
You know what? I'm on LinkedIn. I have DetwilerConsultingGroup.com, PEP Nexus. PEP stands for Protect Every Plate. I'm a pretty easy find. My podcast, Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. In fact, be on the lookout for some new podcasts that I'll be starting here pretty soon. And I'm an easy Google search.
Excellent. So there you have it. Reach out to Darin and check out his LinkedIn feed, which is full of stories, publications, inquiries, questions, even from the general public. So there's a great way to interact. And if you're looking for any other resources, I'm on LinkedIn as well, Trevor J. Morones. And yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Thought Leader Product Safety Innovation Podcast. If this conversation raised new questions or perspectives, we invite you to continue it with us at the upcoming Thought Leader Summit this summer. You can find more details in the show notes. Until next time, keep asking the questions that matter.